When Mark and Emily purchased their 42nd home in Ohio, they thought it would be just another renovation project. They'd done this dozens of times, fix, restore, resell. But this house had other plans. The couple had already finished the upper floors and were preparing to tackle the basement. They had no idea that what waited beneath the floorboards would change their lives and drag the FBI into their home. The day started like any other. Dust filled the air as Mark swung his hammer through the old basement walls. Then, a strange sound stopped him mid-swing, a dull thud that didn't belong. Curious, he peeled back the plywood and froze. Beneath the faded wallpaper were strange markings, graffiti, symbols, and cryptic writing scrawled across the concrete. Emily hurried down the stairs, flashlight in hand. "What on earth is that?" she whispered. Mark didn't answer. His curiosity had already taken over. He began scraping away layers of old paint, uncovering more of the strange drawings. Then something caught his eye, a thin metallic line wedged between the rafters. It was stuck so tightly that he had to force it loose, muscles straining as dust rained from above. When he finally freed it, the object slipped into his hands, a gray-green suitcase, covered in grime and time. For a long moment, the couple just stared at it. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide it. The edges were sealed perfectly, wedged in so tight it could have stayed hidden forever. Mark felt his pulse quicken. "This doesn't feel right," he muttered, brushing the dust off. The suitcase was heavier than it looked, unnaturally heavy. He wanted to open it immediately, but stopped himself. Whatever was inside deserved witnesses. He called Emily back down, waiting until she was beside him before unzipping the case. The hinges creaked. A faint, musty scent escaped. Inside were layers of wax paper, dozens of neatly wrapped bundles. For a second, they thought it was junk, maybe old documents or baseball cards. But when Mark peeled back the first layer, his breath caught. Inside was money. Old bills, crisp, perfectly preserved, and bound together like they'd been waiting to be found. "These are all 20s, Mark whispered, disbelief spreading across his face. "There has to be thousands here." They looked at each other, hearts racing. Then came the next bundle, 50s. Hundreds, the stacks kept coming. Each one older than the last, marked with stars, the kind that hadn't circulated since the early 50s. Emily laughed nervously. "Is this real? Where are the cameras?" But there were no cameras, only silence and the sound of their hearts pounding. Beneath the final layer of cash lay a fragile newspaper. The Cleveland Plain Dealer, dated the 25th of March 1951. It confirmed what they feared: this stash had been hidden for over 70 years. The discovery was priceless, nearly $23,000 in antique bill. They hired a lawyer, appraised it, celebrated quietly, and returned to work believing their little mystery was over. But the house wasn't finished with him yet. During the next phase of renovation, Mark hit something again, this time above him. Another suitcase wedged in the ceiling beams. He froze, staring at the familiar gray-green color. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. Emily rushed over, and together they pulled it down. The second suitcase was even heavier. Their hands shook as they opened it. More cash, stacks upon stacks, older, rarer, cleaner. An additional $45,000. But even then, it didn't feel like luck anymore. It felt deliberate. Someone had placed these here for a reason, and soon that reason would make their blood run cold. Days later, Mark returned to the basement alone. The excitement of their find had faded into unease. Every creak, every sound in the house made him tense. As he tore down another section of the ceiling, his hammer struck something solid again. Not wood, not metal, something hidden. His stomach dropped. It was another suitcase. He shouted, but his voice echoed back unanswered. She wasn't home yet. He stood there, staring at the object, hands trembling. Curiosity gnawed at him until she arrived. When Emily finally walked through the door, he was waiting, covered in dust and sweat, eyes wide with a mix of fear and anticipation. They opened it together, but unlike the others, this suitcase wasn't filled with money. Inside were odd trinkets, a wooden jewelry box, foreign coins, small velvet pouches containing silver bars, and envelopes filled with old currency. Beneath them, a faint glint of gold caught Emily's eye. Rings, watches, family heirlooms perhaps. "This is getting strange," she murmured. "Who hides this much? In one house?" Mark nodded silently. That was when he noticed it, a small door on the far wall, painted white to blend in. They had never seen it before. "The realtor said that's just the water heater closet," Emily said. But something about it felt off. It was locked tight with a rusted master lock and a heavy bolt. Mark grabbed his hammer. The lock shattered under one heavy swing. When the door creaked open, a stale, damp odor rushed out. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing something deeply unsettling. The walls were padded, carpeted, and soundproofed. "What is this?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The room wasn't small, it was built intentionally, lined with thick insulation and strange stains on the floor. A chill crawled down Mark's spine. This wasn't storage. Someone had gone to great lengths to keep whatever happened inside unheard. Then they saw another suitcase, sitting in the corner. Cautiously, Mark unlatched it. Inside was a wooden box, a stack of envelopes, and a small black safe. He turned to Emily, whose eyes pleaded with him not to open it, but he couldn't stop now. He forced the safe open. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, yellowed, trembling in the flashlight beam. Scrawled across it in jagged handwriting were two words: "Save yourself." Emily gasped. "Mark, we need to stop." But before he could respond, she pointed toward the far corner, an old brown briefcase half buried under debris. When Mark pulled it free, it rattled. Inside were 6 VHS tapes, each labeled with faded marker. 5 had words scratched across them. Do not. The 6th was blank. The couple stared at each other in silence. Every instinct told them to leave it alone. But curiosity, that same dangerous curiosity that had driven them this far, won again. Mark slid the first tape into an old player they found in storage. Moments later, he slammed the power off, his face pale. We're calling the police. Hours later, flashing lights surrounded the house. FBI agents stormed in, taking the tapes, the briefcase, and the contents of the soundproof room. They said little, only that the case was now classified. The couple never learned what was on those tapes. The truth was sealed away, locked behind evidence tags and government files. Some said the recordings exposed something horrific, something done in that hidden room decades ago. Others believed it was a warning, a message never meant to be found. Either way, Mark and Emily's renovation turned into a nightmare that would haunt them forever. Their house, once a dream project, had turned into a tomb of secrets, one that whispered from behind its walls long after the authorities left. They sold the home, but even years later when they spoke about it, they still remembered the faint smell of dust, the eerie silence of that soundproof room, and those 2 words written in black ink: save yourself.